does a refugee who spoke no English become a successful business leader who hung out with a U.S. president? You'll find out by the end of the show. Hi, welcome to You Belong Here, the place to be for positive stories of immigrant women from all around the world. I'm Porcia Chen Silverberg. I was made in Taiwan. This show is brought to you by the You Belong Here Foundation, a multimedia social enterprise that nurtures a community of immigrant sheroes and their allies. You're about to hear from inspiring women sharing their successes, challenges, and how they are living meaningful American dreams. Stay a while to pick up some useful tips on how you can live your own American dream. Today, you will meet Christina and Quinn Tran. Voted as one of the most influential women in the San Francisco Bay Area, Christina was a refugee from the fall of Saigon who has achieved the top leadership levels in her area of engineering, healthcare, finance, consulting, and venture capital. Born in Vietnam, Quinn Tran is a passionate change maker and value builder. She has extensive leadership experience with Fortune 500 companies and technology startups. As a serial entrepreneur, Quinn has managed $1 billion businesses and scaled startups from inception to $150 million in revenue and with successful exits. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
I've been so looking forward to hearing your stories. I mean, really, refugees to hanging out with the president? Wow. I mean, I love to know how this happened because you were part of the first ever U.S. delegate to Vietnam, right?
Correct. So it started out with, I've served on the board of the California Asia Business Council, and we had a call from the White House administration that said, we want Vietnamese Americans to come with us on the White House delegation with President Clinton, because he was the first U.S. president to set foot in Vietnam in the year 2000, and they thought it was very meaningful to have Vietnamese American to go with the delegation, so they asked us to organize the delegation. So we got on the phone, and then I think that's how we got together. We met, and we organized on the fly the whole itinerary of starting out in Hanoi and then going to Saigon and hosting the president in Hanoi at the Hanoi Theater for a show, and then hosting a luncheon with the congressional delegation in Saigon. Wow.
And you didn't know each other before that trip?
No. We met on the trip, and we made it work.
Yeah. Yes, you did, right? And how long were you there?
For about a week or 10 days?
About a week, yeah.
It was intense.
Yeah, it was just we arrived and we had a few days to prepare. And then, the delegation came, and it started out with the Hanoi Theater, where we organized a really big show of Vietnamese music and dances. And both presidents of the U.S. and Vietnam were part of the audience, and so were Chelsea and Hillary.
And we were the human shield.
Yeah.
Because they sat behind you, right?
In front of them. Right.
And then they had all the Vietnamese Americans sit right in front of the president. We were their shield. So I was able to turn around and, say hi to Clinton.
Say hi to the Clintons.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was very engaging. But what's meaningful about that is we as Vietnamese Americans organized the trip, introduced the White House and the delegation to many wonderful aspects of Vietnam, culturally, and young talents. We discovered that there's so many brilliant wanting to learn young people, and they love the United States way of doing things, the entrepreneurial spirit. So we organized meetings, and there was so much energy and so much love about what America represents, and that's what remained with us. And then that's what motivated us to organize a subsequent conference at Stanford to start the beginning of essentially building the bridge and sharing know-how, knowledge, and way of doing things.
Yeah, and just business interchange. And then we started the Vietnamese Silicon Valley network of Vietnamese American executives and businesses and bankers, lawyers, and we had meetings every month. We gathered to talk about opportunities to do business in Vietnam. And I think we were way ahead of our times.
I would say we make a few meaningful impacts in Vietnam too.
I bet.
I remember we issue an executive summary out of the conference, and one of the key things that we kept pushing the Vietnamese government for was to liberate the internet. And the way to do that is to lower the cost of telecommunication. Telecommunication was so expensive then. And the second thing is to build high-tech parks throughout the country.
Oh, wow.
So those two things happen, and therefore the internet blossomed, and so many got on that bandwagon, and now Vietnam is one of the destinations for software development and new companies.
Wow.
The second one was that Saigon High Tech Park was built, and Intel and HP went in there with billions of dollars of investment.
Wow.
So I would say our impacts, even though we didn't realize that was the intent, was pretty amazing.
And I think that's what's remarkable, right? Both of you, Quinn and Christina, you were behind the scenes. You were part of what made this possible. You planned this trip, you know, the delegate, but most people would never know that. They wouldn't know. Right here are the two reasons why this happened and why prosperity in Vietnam is good for business here too, right? It's really lifting everyone up. But I would go back to my original question. There are lots and lots of Vietnamese Americans here in Silicon Valley and everywhere. Why were you two asked to help organize this delegate? How did you get there from being a refugee?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, we were seen as leaders and game changers and people who are willing to take risks. I mean, the Vietnamese American community was not very supportive of us building the bridge to Vietnam because Vietnam was, we left Vietnam as refugees. Why are you going back there and building the bridge? And people who left Vietnam were very much against it and against what we were doing. So it was, and we were, we weren't scared. I mean, we had to watch for people who were rioting us and picketing our conference and writing newspaper articles about, in the Vietnamese newspapers about me and my father and my family. But we just kept going because we felt it was the right thing to do for our country.
Exactly. We were so moved by the fact that everyone wanted to have a better life. Then when we went back to Vietnam and saw it, it was all about wanting to move forward with friendship. There are lots of young people, they knew nothing about the war. Even people in the war, they say it's past, They want to welcome us. So we said, being people of two cultures for sure, and that we have made some milestones in our career. This is at least what, at the very least, we can do for our community here, for younger people, and I think for the whole community at large. And we are happy that things work out.
Oh, so maybe we can hear a little bit about your journey, both of you individually. So Christina, I know you said your father was, tell us about your background.
My father was the Chief of Naval Training of the South Vietnamese Navy. So he Vietnamized the war. So he took over, trained the Vietnamese Navy so that the U.S. Navy was the first armed forces to pull out of Vietnam in 1972. And my father really believed in education. So he headed the Vietnamese Naval Academy before he became Chief of Naval Training. And so the U.S. Navy gave him full scholarship when he completed Vietnamizing the war and left to the U.S. They paid for 2 masters and a PhD.
Wow.
And my mother, during the fall of Saigon, when everything happened in 1975, my mother, the strength, I have to talk about the strength of a woman, of my mother to figure our way out of Vietnam as Saigon was falling and the bombs were falling all around our neighborhood, and they were bombing my school and the schools in our neighborhood. She negotiated a way for us to get out through a woman we had never met before who was married to an American. We just paid her gold to say, can you tell the U.S. Embassy that we're relatives? And they believed us. And so we got on one of the last U.S. cargo planes out of Vietnam the day before they bombed Tan Son Nhut Airport. Like, we barely made it out. And we made it to Guam refugee camp, and my mother was able to call my father and say, we made it out. And in the meantime, he had asked the U.S. Navy to take us with them, but they had missed us. They came to our house and we're already gone with this other woman. So we were very fortunate to have 2 ways out.
Wow. And you remember the life in a refugee camp?
Yeah.
Because you were young, right?
I was not. Yeah, I remember now. I was 9, and it was like the MASH movie. They serve you all this gooey food, like gooey eggs, gooey oatmeal, food that I'd never seen before. And they set up tents, and we only had 2 changes of clothes on our body. We left everything behind.
Of course.
And 2 pajamas, 2 dresses, and wandered around the camp and didn't speak any English. And then we ended up at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. It's another refugee camp. And I have to say, the Americans, if you compare like what the migrants from Mexico are doing, I've really felt lucky and welcome.
Right.
The Americans really took care of us, and the U.S. naval families took us into their homes, and really supported us. I really have to feel sorry for what the immigrants are dealing with today.
Yeah. And how about you, Quinn? You too lived in a refugee camp? And
no, I actually was a lot luckier from a journey here. I actually earned a scholarship to attend last year of high school under the American Field Service program. So I came here in '74. I was supposed to go home at the end of the school year in '75. And of course, end of April, South Vietnam fell. I was here living with a host family in Billings, Montana. So I saw the whole country collapse on television. And I remember every night when the news came on, I cry and I'd look into this small television screen trying to see if I could spot my family on one of those boats or on the airplanes, that taking off from the U.S. embassies in Vietnam. So that was the story. Fast forward, a few of my family members made it out. My parents, because of their arduous journey from central Vietnam, Hue, to Saigon, they saw so much death and destruction. At the end, they reflected and they said, no, we are in late stage. We don't want to leave. You kids leave. And then the rest of the family stay back. But a few could not stay because, like, my brother was a pilot in South Vietnam. He could not stay. And my sister was an English teacher working for the USAID. She could not stay behind because they would have been in prison right away.
Sure.
So they dashed through the bombs and shellings and whatnot, and made it to airplanes and ships, made it here, ended up in refugee camps. And I worked with the local church to bring them to Billings, Montana, and we reunite. And with the assistance of my host family. But at that time, when South Vietnam fell, then I was declared refugee because I could not go back.
Right. So you were here all by yourself.
Yes, but with a family.
With your host family.
With the host family.
And that's what I mean. And you're absolutely right, Christina. I grew up in Denver. I too actually felt very welcomed, and I've met so many amazing Americans. I think that's actually what makes this country great is the sense of generosity. I think most Americans are so eager to help, and they're always looking for ways to include you, right? So at least that's definitely much more true maybe before the last few years.
Yes.
But I think given your circumstances, even though it's slightly different how you became a refugee, there are probably very similar things you did to really become the leader that you did in order to be included to a U.S. delegate, right? So you said you had the reputation as a leader. Obviously you did too, Quinn. So can you maybe help name some of these qualities, I say, that define maybe like a leadership qualities, or what makes immigrant excellence happen, or immigrant mindset? I feel like there's certain characteristics that's just very universal if someone were to become a leader and really go from surviving to thriving, right?
Yeah, first you have to be fearless. So I've been through several industries. You mentioned I don't have a healthcare background. I don't have an engineering background, but I got jobs in all these different industries. I'm not a chief financial officer, but then I manage a company of chief financial officers. So you basically having gone through what we have gone through and starting from scratch, I think just try everything. And my parents immersed me. We came without speaking any English, but it didn't matter if it's almost summer. You know, that was April 30th. As soon as we arrived in Washington, D.C., they put me in school. You are going to school and learning English, even though there was only a few weeks of school left. And then they sent me to summer camp with all the other kids, threw me on a bus, and so I was crying my heart out, but you know, total immersion into everything that's new. I think I had to overcome. Yes, immersion,
perseverance, and I would say tenacity, grit, lots of grit, and being resourceful, like your mom. That's a definite quality.
Don't give up. Try again.
Don't give up. Try again, and maybe
and building your confidence.
Building your confidence.
Yeah, there was a time when I was terrified of going to my company's happy hour because I didn't know how to work the room, and I didn't know what to say. What do you say to people? You know, you clam up, but I forced myself to go and learn how to talk to people, how to network. And I think it's, you know, for me, it's like building your network, your trusted advisors is very important to, so that there's always support for you everywhere you go.
And I would say, from a mindset standpoint, you always have to be positive. You think that there is a positive outcome at the end of the road, and you always think of problem solving. I always try to think of how do I solve this problem with limited resources, limited time. And you double up your efforts, or triple up, you save whatever you need to do to get there. So one of the key things I would say to any immigrant is don't ever think of yourselves as a victim, even though you might have been victimized. A lot of immigrant or refugee women or ladies we know have been victimized on open seas, but they came, they thrived, they survived, they lived through horrendous experience and depression, for sure. But in the end, I think there is that inner self that say, don't become victimized by your own circumstance. You are on good ground with good companies around. You have opportunities ahead of you. So just keep going.
Yeah, I see it as, an incredible opportunity. Yes, I lost my home and my country and my homeland, especially my homeland. I didn't think I could ever set foot back, but, but my mother, who was valedictorian of her high school, growing up in Vietnam, she couldn't go to college. It was said that she was too pretty to go to college. And my marriage would have been arranged. But when we came here, the roles were reversed. My father took care of the kids so that she can get her education, got her college degree, became a medical technologist, went through to get her master's, and started working on her PhD. And that is we just took every opportunity we could to succeed here.
Right. So I think that's another quality, is being able to turn, it's the cliche, turn lemons into lemonade, but really identify opportunities, right? To really not just be resourceful, but being able to be optimistic and look at the other side of the circumstance and then try to make it work. And also I think the self-sustainability too, I feel like that's also really important. And so you just said that, again, you're using your mom as a great example. I'll use this opportunity, this segue, to ask you to complete the sentence, that only an immigrant woman, ... How would you complete this sentence?
Only, go ahead.
I can go first. So only an immigrant woman will start a business more than her American-born counterpart. So immigrant women are more likely to start their own businesses and companies. And I'm very focused on that because I see that there is a great, with the change of times now, with the support that we're getting for diversity and inclusion, that there will be more focus, more women starting companies, and there will be more, hopefully more investing in immigrant women-founded companies, and I'm really seeing that change a lot.
So that's good.
This year, only starting this year, recently.
That's very positive. And Quinn, only an immigrant women?
I agree with what Christina just said wholeheartedly. And would add that only an immigrant woman would walk on broken glass, break down walls, dig holes, does whatever she needs to do to get to the other side, and she finds the rainbow end.
Oh, that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
And if I were to ask you, as we're winding down, which just I'm very sad that we barely got started talking about all this great, wonderful tips. Can you maybe give one piece of advice, maybe to your younger self or to a young woman, a young immigrant woman who is watching? What's one thing that really helped you get to where you are today?
I have to say it again, that you network and build a group of trusted advisors. Maybe find 10 people who are very successful that's always going to watch your back, that you can always go to and ask for help or ask for guidance.
So I can hear someone say, but I'm new to this country, I don't know anybody. How am I going to find those people? What would you say?
Yeah, network. Haphazard networking.
Start with your neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay, start with your neighbors. Just get out there.
Yeah.
Right? You have to get out of your house in order to meet people.
Yeah, go to meetings, go to meetup, go to conferences, volunteer. Right. And I think I really got to where I am because I volunteered, for sit on boards and, find things that you really believe in and meet people in the process.
Oh, I love that, because that's part of my mission, is to help bring more immigrants and more immigrant women specifically into their local communities through volunteerism and community service, or get involved in school boards, or just get out there and really become part of the community, right?
Absolutely.
So Quinn, one piece of advice.
Ditto that, and I would say focus on lifelong learning. There is so much to learn, whether it's sharpening your skill set in terms of life skills or new knowledge, because technology enables you to learn in many different ways, but also technology means new ways of doing things that one needs to adapt to. So lifelong learning keeps one fresh, one relevant, one productive, and very engaged. So no matter what, keep on learning.
Oh, I love that. That's also my motto. I think lifelong learning is important, and education of all different kinds, right? So one thing you have said to me, Christina, is if we were to debunk a myth Americans may have about immigrants, you said, not all of us are on welfare, and right, so, and we're all hardworking, maybe harder working than Americans think for immigrants, right?
Yes.
Is
there one thing you would like to debunk before we wind down and wrap up?
From both personalities or values, Americans are very similar to a lot of immigrants than you think.
Right, because most Americans are all immigrants anyway, just from different generations, right? We are a country of immigrants. Some of us came in this generation, some came much earlier, but we are all Americans, right? And any one last thing you'd like to offer that I didn't ask you?
I think we have a lot to share, so we would love to continue this conversation.
Yes,
if
me
anything
too.
else, I would say I feel really blessed and privileged, and actually richer and stronger, having gone through the tough journey of being a, let's say, a person who had lost a country, an immigrant, and a refugee, an immigrant, and now a true citizen in the sense of the word.
That's right. We are proud Americans.
Yes, and I really would encourage you know, everyone to just go for it, do it. Even if you don't know what you're doing, you can figure it out.
Yes, that's so great.
Just try it.
Thank you so much. I know we will continue the conversation because there's so much more to share. And now Christina, Quinn, and I would love to hear from you. We talked about so many interesting and amazing things today. I'm curious, what's one thing that resonated with you, and what actions are you inspired to take? What's your story? Please leave a comment below. Let's continue the conversation. And You Belong Here Foundation is committed to infuse a plethora of positive stories of immigrant women and ignite meaningful conversations in our community. I'm Porcia Chen Silverberg. Today's production comes to you from Palo Alto, California. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, you deserve to be seen, be heard, and belong. You belong here. Thank you. And thank you so much. This is so amazing. Oh, and I really want to, keep going with the tips, because both of you really
whether you got a family of single parenting, or you're Asian, African, European, or American, whether you pray to God or atheist is irrelevant, 'cause what you got inside is the same as all your preference.
great things to share. So thank you for your patience.
Sorry, I couldn't make coffee.